as you previously scheduled.
Okay.
Okay, I believe that we are live. All right, good morning, all. The time is now 9:34 a.m. and I call to order the January 14, 2023 meeting for LC LaBelle Stokes Community Freedom Public Charter School Board of Trustees meeting. Welcome to our board meeting. My name is Hoyt King and I am the board chair. Our board members present today are, and I'll ask you to verbally do a roll call. And why don't we start with? So please begin. I'll have someone begin the roll call.
Crystal Galladay.
Carlos Bonner.
Adina Ellis.
Kira Orr.
Tracy
Rodney Rice.
Heather Harding.
Anton Smith.
Okay, thank you very much. The next item on the agenda today is to approve both the November 12th and December 7th minutes. Please review the minutes in the live binder, and we'll give you a couple minutes to do that, several minutes to do that. Okay, does anyone like any more time? Okay, can I get a motion to approve both the November 12th and the December 7th minutes?
Wait, Hoyt,
Sure.
quickly. Under the campus update in November, did we want to say that it was for the 2021-2022 school year, or were we looking forward?
Pull that up again.
Currently, it states that the campus updates, we presented an update of activities at each campus during the 2022 to 2023 school year.
I believe that's correct. They were giving updates, things that are going on in the current school year rather than a review of the previous school year. That was my understanding.
Okay, well, maybe we could change the word during to for, and that might be more clear. And then one other small, tiny change would be where Bobby Caballero's part is after successes, just a colon. Same with challenges, just small. Thank you.
Okay, are there any additional comments, feedback? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve both the November 12 and the December 7 minutes?
I motion that we approve the November 22 meeting minutes.
I second. This is Heather. I second.
Okay. So I have a motion and a second to approve both the November 12 and the December 7th meeting minutes. Is there any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, let's have a roll call vote on the motion to approve the date, to approve both the November 12 and the December 7 board meeting minutes and agenda.
Carlos Bonner, aye.
Kira Orr, I.
Adina Ellis, I.
Heather Harding, aye.
Erica McGrady, aye.
Crystal
Anton Smith,
Galladay,
aye.
I.
Rodney Rice, aye.
Tracy Friedlander, aye.
Do I have any nays? Okay, according to the vote, the meeting minutes for both November 12 and December 7 are approved by the board. We will next move to the next item in our agenda. That would be the executive director's report. And I will hand this over to the executive director, Erica Bryan. Erica.
Thank you, Hoyt. And Happy New Year to everyone. I
Happy New
wish you all a year full of peace and good health, happiness and prosperity. I am going to share my screen with you now. Give me just a moment. You see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So in my executive director's report today, I'll be presenting responses to a couple of questions that came up in the November board meeting, specifically about contingency plans for pandemic operations, information about student socio-emotional wellness survey that we recently participated in at Stokes, an updated bullying prevention policy that I have provided previously with the board and want to get the updates approved. I also want to share information about a Washington Post magazine contribution that I made in December. And then finally, information about a significant milestone that we've reached, and that's the return to our international study tours for our graduating fifth graders. And then finally, some upcoming event information. All right. So in the November board meeting, there were questions about whether the school had contingency plans in place for future pandemic operations. And I just wanted to share that for school years 2021 and 21-22, that all schools in the district had to present to the Office of the State Superintendent of Education something that we call continuous education plans that provide a detailed explanation of how the school operates in a pandemic safely, either in person, providing in-person instruction, or if necessary, a plan for distance learning. These plans, again, were presented to OSSI in school year 2021 and 21-22 and approved by OSSI. So for future pandemic operations, we would fall back on the plans that we currently have, and likely we would have to present updated plans to the Office of the State Superintendent of Education for them to approve. So we do have plans in place for this year in particular, 22 school year 22-23. We had to present OSSI with a health and safety mitigation plan for approval. And this plan really just details the practices of our school community, depending on what the COVID-19 community level is. So there are certain measures that we would have in place if community levels are low. Additional measures would be taken if community levels are medium or high. This plan, again, has been approved by OSSI, and all of these plans are posted on our school's website under the policy section. Are there any questions about our contingency plans for pandemic operations? Okay. So we will go on, go on to the DC Wellbeing Data Project. I mentioned in the September retreat that the school had been approached by one of our biggest funders, which is Education for DC. They asked us whether we would be interested in participating in a citywide student wellness survey that would assess students' social and emotional outcome measures. This is a confidential, we said that we were absolutely interested in participating in the survey, particularly after the last few years of COVID. We want to have a way of assessing how our students are doing with their social and emotional wellness. This is also, as you recall, one of a part of our strategic plan that we wanted to be able to assess their social and emotional outcome measures. So we decided that we would participate in this survey. It was a confidential survey of our students in grades 3 through 5. The survey was completed in fall of 2022. The results of the survey will give us insight into students' needs, how they are doing in comparison to their peers citywide, and how other LEAs are leveraging systems and supports and interventions to help improve student social and emotional well-being. Just as for your information, this survey was fully funded. Our participation was fully funded this year through grants. It will be funded at a rate 50% next year and 25% in year 3. It's a 3-year project. The full cost of the annual survey is just over $5,000. So that cost is being covered this year. Next year, we pay half. In the following year, we pay 75%. Any questions about this so far?
I have a question, Erica. The how exactly are you all as the school using this data? I mean, one thing that came to mind for me just as a parent is like, for example, during parent teacher conferences, I mean, what's discussed primarily,
Mhm.
or at least the way those conversations are framed, is very much focused on academic progress.
Mhm.
So I'm just wondering whether or not there's any kind of formal or official way that some of this data might be incorporated into communications with parents and guardians about their scholar.
I think that's a great question, and it leads to the next slide.
Okay.
Well, actually, the next slide doesn't respond directly to your question, but it does speak to kind of what our next steps will be. And I think your suggestion, actually, Adina, if that is not already part of the thinking process, that it makes complete sense to have this as part of the share out with parents of students who have participated in the survey. But let's see. So I was just going to give a quick overview of how our students did on the survey and then go on to next steps in the planning process. But generally speaking, and this is across the LEA, these are results from both campuses, but there is a lot of similarity in the results between campuses. But generally speaking, it looks like our students did well. The areas where they are strongest are rigorous expectations. They believe that the adults, the educators around them, have rigorous expectations for them, and they have rigorous expectations for themselves. There's a very strong sense of belonging among our students, which makes sense to me because we really focus on community and finding place within community at Stokes. As well as supportive relationships. Students feel that they have support from the adults in their lives, and they also highly value the school community. The areas where our students are not as strong are in the area of perseverance and self-efficacy. So the plan is, because we got these results back in December. For some reason, I'm not advancing my slide. Can you guys see that next slide? Nope. Okay. Let me try this again, just a moment. Okay. So we received the results from this survey in December before winter break. Currently, the behavioral health teams at each of the campuses, which means the school counselors, the deans of students, and other staff involved in student support, are analyzing the survey results and determining how to best support students in the areas needed. I think that, again, going back to Adina's question about how we're using the data, we will talk about internally how to incorporate some feedback to parents, because I think that makes a lot of sense. We just don't have that structure right now, to my knowledge. The data has also been shared out with the board's Academic Excellence Committee for their review. So, are there any other questions about the section?
Yes, this is Kira. So as you're talking about the behavioral health teams analyzing that process, you're saying you do not know how that's going to go yet, what that process entails. Is that correct?
No, I said that they have just begun analyzing the data now that we're back from winter break, and they are working on how to I'm not sure. Can you say more about your question? Because I actually am not sure.
I'm
how
just
to-
wondering what the process of analyzing, what are they looking at specifically to sort of break down why, in particular, those two areas of perseverance and self-efficacy, why they're on the
Mhm.
lower end.
Yeah. So they're looking, the results that I've shared with you are just general overviews. There's more detailed survey of the data that is a deeper dive into, so very specific questions that they can look at results from to determine, you know, how they are going to support students. It's the process is that the behavioral health team comes together. They review the data results. They look at the trends of the results, and they will determine how to push in supports based on those trends.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Erica, the data that they are analyzing, is it only for the Stokes students or is it across all of a broader educational spectrum?
That's a great question, Carlos. They are looking at Stokes student-specific data, but this survey will also give us access to trends across the city.
Okay.
Yes. So yeah, the survey gives us access to trends across the city, and our participation in this project, in this survey, will give us access to information about what other schools in the area are doing to push in supports for their students, what intervention methods other schools are using, what resources other schools might be accessing. So it's a multi-pronged approach.
Thank you.
Welcome. Any other questions?
And can the academic excellence get the results of that as well, once they get all that data processed?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Erica, the behavioral health teams, you may have said it earlier and I missed it. The behavioral health teams, these are third-party folks or these?
These are internal staff members. These would be our school-based school counselors,
Okay,
the deans of students at each of the schools. And then there are other staff as needed who are in the student support departments who could also participate, may also participate.
okay. So when we first kicked this year off, this school year off, soon after that, you helped us understand that, you know, national trends were seeing students returning to school after this era of COVID with certain, you know, what I would describe as socio-emotional areas to address that were impacting school, partly as a result of being away for 2 years or isolated for 2 years to some degree, and that you all were noticing some of those areas in the Stokes school. Oh, so I'm assuming that this survey is part of the overall strategy or tools that are being incorporated to address those areas
This,
we're noticing earlier.
yes, this survey gave us an opportunity, a structured, something that was already structured, opportunity to determine how our to both validate our suspicions that some students are struggling after the last couple of years of school during a pandemic. So gives us an opportunity to capture actual data about that phenomenon, and also based on the data that we collect, push in very targeted interventions into the areas where we see students struggling the most.
Did you say earlier that you were able to drill down to the student level, the individual student level?
It is, I believe that, actually, I don't know if it's available because it is an anonymous survey. I'm not sure if we have drilled down to individual students or if it's aggregated, but we can definitely, I can check.
Okay. Okay. So we've got this lever, we've got the bullying policy. What are the, I'm sure there's some internal school areas that are being done already to kind of address the things that you saw earlier the school year.
Our school social workers are very busy and active, supporting our students, not just our school social workers, but not just the school social workers and the behavioral health teams, but all of the adult staff in one way or another are actively working to support our students' needs.
Okay. So we got this, we got the policy we just, the policy you sent out earlier this week, and we've got the targets, the individual specific work at the school by the social workers. Those are our primary levers.
Yes, and go ahead.
I was just going to say, excuse me, and Hoyt, much of that information was provided in the November meeting when the campus directors gave their reports, I believe. I believe that they talked about some of those interventions.
They did.
Okay. All right. If there are no more questions about the survey, we can move on to the draft of the updated bullying prevention policy that Hoyt just referenced. I have included in your live binders packet a draft of this bullying prevention policy. The original policy that we had was approved in 2012, and I see that Ms. Galladay has raised her hand. Ms. Galladay?
I'll wait till you get through your intro, and then I had 2 comments and questions.
Okay. Our original bullying policy was drafted and approved in 2012. The creator of this policy was our former school psychologist, who at the time was also working with the citywide bullying prevention task force. As I was saying earlier, that the updated draft policy was it was updated to align with the Student Fair Act Access to School Amendment of 2018. In that version, in the version of the policy that is included in your packet, any references to exclusionary discipline, which is referring to either suspensions or expulsions, but those references are now aligned with the DC Fair Access to School Act. of 2018. Specifically, it says that if a bully is a student, suspension or expulsion imposed is consistent with the Stokes Schools policies set forth in our family handbook and also the DC Fair Access to School Act of 2018. The draft that you have been provided has already been passed by the head of the bullying prevention department at OSSI and has been approved for compliance. Ms. Galladay.
Hi, yes, there were two sections that I had questions on. One was on page 4, section titled Investigation Incidents of Bullying, and it's in the Parents and Guardians paragraph. So since we are dealing with minors, and as a parent, I would want to be aware of what's going on with my child. In the last sentence, it says a team member will determine if parent or guardian should be informed prior or after the investigation of an incident. I just wanted to know, why wouldn't a parent or guardian be informed prior to an investigation? Like once you're aware that that child is going to be involved in it. So that's my first question, and I'll wait for an answer for that.
Yeah. I think that we could actually update the language in alignment with your suggestions. I don't think that that would be a problem.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And then on page 6, there is mentioned a follow-up meeting with targets and perpetrators involved in the incident. Now, I saw timeframes for the investigation, services provided to scholars and appeals, but not for this, which is a follow-up meetings. So could we please, could you please share and/or could we update the document with like a time range? Because I believe I saw for one where it's like if it's an incident, it needs to be addressed within 1 day and then resolved within 30 days. So just providing a time frame for that, since everything else had a time frame.
We can check with the bullying prevention people at OSSI to determine, what their suggestion is for a timeline and update it based on their information about best practices or existing policies. Yes.
Sounds great. Thank you. And I just encourage all parents to look at this as well as the other policies so you can be aware of what the standards are and just, talk to your children about different things. Because I know at the school they did have like a bullying or anti-bullying session. So, and then also attend the First Friday sessions that they have for parents. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Galladay. Ms. Ellis has her hand raised.
Me again.
Yes, ma'am.
So, I completely acknowledge that I might be overthinking this, but in the definition of bullying, the one suggestion that I have, and Erica, as I was reading through this policy, I thought about, I can't remember which meeting this was, but some meeting last year, where you talked a little bit about like the demographic shift that Stokes and other schools are, the racial and ethnic demographic shift that Stokes and other schools are experiencing, or at least are anticipating in the coming years. And this is really more of a suggestion that, as you revisit this policy annually, that you look through that lens, because when I'm looking, excuse me, when I was reading through the definition, there were just certain things that were popping in my head that may specifically apply to students who come from different backgrounds or may have different experience. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? And so just to give some examples really quickly, and again, I'm probably overthinking this, and I know that there's no way to capture every single specific thing that a child could be bullied for, and that some of, many of these descriptors in the definition, I think, capture a lot of, can capture more specifics. But just for example, well, first of all, the word disability obviously does capture a lot, but I don't know. I mean, it seems to me that there could be some further definition there just for clarity, right? Like, I'm assuming we're talking about intellectual disability, perhaps cognitive disability, maybe physical disability. And then for personal appearance, And again, it probably sounds like I'm nitpicking here, but personal appearance. I wonder whether or not physical appearance could also be a part of that. I mean, for me, like, having a front row seat to a young child and hearing
Yeah.
about kind of banter and conversations between,
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of, I don't know if I would define it as bullying, but a lot of talk
Mhm.
and singling out about stature, whether
Mhm.
it's tall or fat
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
short, something like that. And then the
Yeah.
last thing, back to my original point about just keeping in mind, the goal of being more inclusive of students, that, I thought about particularly about what you all have gone through and the conversations around access to technology, things that are perhaps related to income or socioeconomic status. And then the last thing I would say is also food security. So I was really just thinking about that population that you mentioned some meetings back, about how we were going to have to be more proactive in ensuring that the school was recruiting students of different backgrounds, and some things that might be necessary to call out specifically in light of that. That's it.
All very good feedback. Thank you. Looking at everything that the school does through a lens of equity and inclusion is our intent. So we can definitely go back and take one more look at this to see if we've done everything that we can to be equitable and inclusive with our language. So thank you. I appreciate the feedback.
No problem. Thank you.
Excuse me, Erica, if I could, and I haven't mastered the hand raising part yet, so I apologize.
Not a problem.
I have a slightly different view of the notification point that Ms. Galladay raised earlier. As someone who does investigations, I can see it being potentially problematic to notify a parent prematurely. The parent will probably have lots of questions that haven't been answered because the investigation hasn't been done. And there's always a concern of, when we do investigation, I don't want to use a parent of this, but of the person of a desire to get more information so that the parent could get investigating on their own, and that can interfere with the integrity of the actual investigation. And so my viewpoint is that when there's sufficient reason to notify the parent, that makes more sense to me, rather than you having a lot of questions that you don't have answers to. And the parents going to want answers, and they deserve answers, but you can't tell them because you haven't investigated. So that's
a great point. Yeah, that's a great point. So are you suggesting updating language or to leave as is?
I think as is. I think as is. It kind of gives you the flexibility. I mean, it would be kind of, once again, I'm just concerned about notifying a parent before anything has been shown or any actual facts have been gathered beyond the allegation.
I don't agree with that. And then I respect and understand where you're coming from, where parents can ask questions if there's not answers, but just knowing if my scholar is involved in something, and this is all the information we have now, at least I know something, because we're dealing with minors here. We're not dealing with adults that can, handle themselves in every situation. So that's my stance on that.
But
So
what Dr. Antoine described is really kind of standard policy, at least in the schools that I'm familiar with. And I'm sure Stokes is lawyered up like so many other schools, but they use that kind of language to be more flexible in situations. So there are investigations at the school that I'm working at now that are going on, but given the crowd in New York City, which is even more litigious than most people, before you approach a parent, you have to have those kind of details before any parent is brought in, just from a legal standpoint. So it is to protect the children and the school, but it's really kind of a standard policy in my experience of schools.
Yes,
Thank you for that, Rodney. I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that it sounds to me like what's at question is the kind of definition of the term investigation. There's always a certain amount of like research into an incident that will take place almost immediately, you know, once a staff member, a teacher, an administrator finds out that there is an issue. So as soon as somebody finds out that there is a problem, that begins the process of investigation. If we're talking about this, and there are multiple steps in an investigation. So there is necessarily a piece that will have to take place before parent notification for an administrator to know what's going on, right? I think Ms. Galladay, and please correct me if I am wrong, but your concern is more about when an administrator formally meets with the student, that the parent would want to be notified beforehand. Can you tell us specifically, like, understanding that there is a certain amount of investigative work that has to take place in any incident or complaint before like a formal process starts? Can you tell us which part of this investigative process you want families to be notified about?
I mean, it could definitely be after preliminary investigations to see, because I know within the whole process from looking at the document, it's a preliminary investigation to see if it's even bullying, right?
Right.
So I'm okay for me, and I can't speak for every parent, if it's like you do the preliminary just to see what it is, and then you identify the parent, so that you are able to answer some questions, but the parent needs to be involved, like know what's going on with their child at some point in an investigation. It can't go deep into an investigation and the parent doesn't know. Like that's going to lead to a lot more turmoil than you think, and people being upset. So,
A question for you: is this is the language that we're talking about a change from the existing policy? Is this a continuation of the existing policy?
it would need to be an expansion of it, because all it says is that a team member will determine if parents or guardians should be informed prior to or after an incident.
No,
So
I'm asking a little different question. I apologize if I didn't phrase that.
Okay.
What I'm asking is that the language that we're talking about, I know that this is a revision of an existing bullying prevention policy, but is the language that we're in discussion here about the investigation, is that new language? Was that the same language that we've used in the current draft? That's in the current draft of the bullying prevention policy?
It is likely similar language. I would have to go back and do an actual comparison, but it's likely similar language because we have similar language and other kinds of processes.
Okay, I'm curious that if that might be worth looking at. If this is the same language that we're using in the current policy, then I would imagine that our current SOP, our current way of handling these situations would be indicative of how they would be handled in the future. But if it's a change, then obviously that would represent a potential change in how we were handling what we do today. So in other words, that might be an indication of how of what, when parents are notified. Does that make sense?
Ms. Moore?
I don't know if it addressed any questions, but it may give us an indication of how we treat those situations today, if it's the same language.
I see that Ms. Moore has raised her hand and she is muted.
I think that you have all raised good points, and this, as I understand it, this this draft, this policy as written has been approved by OSSI. So if we would want to change it in any way, we would have to submit an amendment. And I would suggest that perhaps perhaps staff take a look at it again, given the comments that we have, and then pass it by the Academic Excellence Committee and bring it back for revisions if necessary, because it could be, what it might require is just a tweaking of the words, a defining of investigation rather than research, putting in some definitions to clarify. But I understand all the perspectives, and you can run it by OSSI, run it by council if we need to respond to those changes, and then bring it back to the full board after everybody's seen it. If that's agreeable to the trustees.
I agree.
I like that. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I especially think in terms of taking it to staff and the folks that are involved in sort of these investigations. I think it's about a word, it's about semantics in some of the words. And even if for the parents, is it just sort of a known thing that there is always got to be some sort of preliminary investigative work done before you go into a full investigation. And at that point, I think if parents understand that there has to be some sort of initial work done prior to any notification, then that needs to be stated, if that is not already understood.
Well, maybe also it's just about inquiries. I mean, it is semantics in a way, but when you're inquiring about a situation, you are gathering information and data, just to make sure you have all the things necessary to move forward. So, but again, that just may be semantics.
Absolutely. And in my current position, I actually do these investigations. So the things that Ms. Galladay is bringing up, I completely understand. And I actually do. So in my school, how we handle it is we do have to notify parents that we have even started some sort of preliminary investigation. But then we also have to share that there may be further investigation involved and at that point. But again, knowing that these are minors, you do want to make sure that the parents are aware that you have spoken with their child even initially, and there may be additional conversations necessary.
And I suspect that happens anytime there's something that happens at school. If there's a bullying incident that is brought to the attention of an adult does, takes note of it, and if it rises to the appropriate level, there's an incident report that is filed, and I believe that's shared with parents. So I suspect we just need to add some words. But does this require a motion if we want to send it back?
You want to send it back? No.
I'm not aware of that.
Send it back to staff. It does not require a motion. Okay.
This is just a draft. Right.
It's an approved draft, as I understand it.
It's a draft that's approved by OSSI, and that needs final approval by Stokes Schools Board. However, if we want staff to review the language for all of the reasons that were just discussed, I don't think we just send, I take it back to staff, and we'll bring it back for the next board meeting for approval by this board. Okay.
That makes sense.
And Erica, I know we were talking about the policy overall, and I think the word smithing is a nuance, but because just the history of Stokes, my recollection is that the staff and teachers are very engaged with parents, and incidences are generally handled well for the most part. So I just want to make sure that the board understands that we do have a very dynamic staff, faculty and staff who have, in my opinion, always been very inclusive of parents. And I understand the sensitivity around bullying and minors. And so I just want to just be a record that we do need to make sure that staff, we acknowledge that the staff is a very well capable organization.
Thank you for that, Carlos. Thank you. Any other conversation around bullying prevention policy before we go to the next item? Okay. Of course, I am stuck. Hold on a second. For some reason, my presentation is not advancing. There we are. Okay. So, advance too much. In December, I made a contribution to a Washington Post magazine article about the benefits of language immersion education. And I have included a link to the article here. The link is behind the paywall. So if you don't have a Washington Post subscription, you may not be able to access it. Oh, okay. I have also included the proof of the article in your live binders packet if you would like to read it that way. There was a lot of good feedback that I received about this article contribution, some connections, additional connections to language immersion schools were made. There was a follow-up request that I got from Peace Corps to help them with some recruitment materials. So I'm in the process of doing that now, but I just wanted to share that bit of news with you in case you had not seen it. Any questions? Okay. On to the next. Cannot get to the next slide. Let's see. Okay. Next slide. Our international study tours are back. We have not taken our graduating fifth graders on study tours since school year 18-19. This year, we have begun the planning process to take one group of students to Panama and one group of students to Martinique. The tour is currently scheduled for May 17th through May 24th. Our campus directors, Bobby and Kareem, who have been instrumental in pulling off these study tours for almost the entire time that we've been doing them. Bobby and Kareem have met with fifth grade parents to have the first informational meeting to talk about logistics, to talk about expenses, to talk about programming, but everyone is very excited about the possibility of being able to do this again. This study tour is an event that students start looking forward to as soon as they know about it, in, as early as kindergarten. And the structure, because we are still in a period of COVID, the structure of this study tour, specifically the number of chaperones who will be accompanying the groups of students will be increased, because we have to plan for the possibility of someone coming down with COVID during the trip, whether it's a student or a staff that will take if a student gets sick, then we'll have to assign a staff member to them. If a staff member gets sick, they will isolate on their own. But we just realize the need for additional chaperones and additional planning and processes like testing prior to travel, and so forth. But we are very excited and optimistic about the potential of this upcoming study tour. Any questions?
No, that's great.
Okay.
Erica, are you is the school allowed to, or maybe you already do, allowed to receive any kind of either in-kind or financial support from either of these governments as part of these?
We would be able to receive support and have received different kinds of support. From the French government, the support has mostly come by way of the embassy and assistance with sometimes visas that are required for some of the students to travel. The French embassy has also supported us in connecting us to resources. So we can receive them, yes. We have not received actual monetary support from these governments.
Or could we, like legally?
I think that we can. I think that we can. We can research that, but I'm pretty sure that we can.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well, the last slide in my presentation is about upcoming activities. Hopefully, within the next week or so, you will be looped in, Board of Trustee members will be connected into our Parent Square communication blasts, so that you will receive this information about upcoming activities at the school on a regular basis. We're going to try not to inundate your inboxes with announcements about school activities, but our communications manager is working on, I don't know if she's going to set it up for a weekly roll-up or how it will come, but you should be receiving regular notifications about school activities very soon. In the interim, just wanted to let you know things that are coming up in the next couple of months. We have a spelling bee coming up at the Brooklyn campus next Friday. East End Spelling Bee is actually scheduled for February 17th. We have our first Friday of February, and I think I have the wrong date there. My apologies. I will go back and look. But February's first Friday is scheduled. There will be a talk with Ruha Benjamin, who is a professor of African American Studies at Princeton, and she is an author. And the discussion will be about how we grow the world we want. It will be a Zoom meeting, so if you have time and would like to attend, you are welcome to do so. I see that Ms. Galladay's hand is raised.
It's for after you finish. It's actually for something later on the slide. Thank you, though, for the acknowledgement.
Okay. All right. Let's see. As a reminder, our 25-year review with the DC Public Charter School Board is scheduled for February 27th at 6 p.m. If you would like to attend, participate in the review, or if you would like to attend the review, you'll need to register in advance. with the DC Public Charter School Board, and I provided a link there for you to register. Again, just a recap of this review: every 5 years, PCSB reviews or renews charter schools' charter agreements. Our last one was when we were 20. They will be reviewing our academic performance, our financial performance, and also our compliance with rules and regulations set forth for public charter schools. We received a preliminary report from PCSB back in maybe November, and the report needed additional or PCSB requested that we pushed the time of our review, which was originally scheduled, I believe, for December or January. But they requested that we push back the time of the review because they needed to collect additional academic performance data. So in the original draft report, we were recommended for continuance for another 5 years. We expect that that will be the case again for this updated report. We expect to receive an updated preliminary report for our review, for Stokes School staff's review, sometime in the next few weeks, because they need to get it to us a month ahead of our actual review date. When we receive and review and get it, I will share out with the board. Any questions? Okay, so we have Black History Month celebrations coming up at both East End and Brooklyn. Have some fun things scheduled, like Spirit Weeks. We've got an assembly going on at East End. At Brooklyn, there'll be a step show and a living museum. And then other February dates, activities, we have our traditional friendship ball on February 17th at Brooklyn, and the date at East End is yet to be determined, but it will be either the 17th or 24th of February. And Miss Galladay.
Yes, I just wanted to point out that it's winter break, the 20th to the 24th of February. So no student will be in school on the February 24th to have that friendship ball. So I would recommend, if you're looking for a Friday, maybe the Friday before, maybe the 10th, being that the 17th is looking like the assembly, the spelling bee, and they still get out at 1 p.m.
Thank you for that input.
No problem.
Any other questions?
Another question, but I would offer this to the board, to each of the board members, and this is definitely something I think that we should put on our agenda for during this remainder of the school year, is for each of us to look at to make an appearance, to attend one of the events that the schools have between now and the rest of the school year. I think it would be great for us to kind of to be present with those events, especially if it involves any of the parents. So we can follow up I'll follow up after this, but I'll get a calendar for the remainder of the year, to the extent that it's out there. And if and I'd like for each of us to see what we can do about to try our best to attend one of them, either in person or over the link if we're traveling.
Can I make a request? Is it possible, I mean, and that also includes for these meetings, that for either, like for the charter school board meeting, but also for these meetings, is it possible for us, the board, to get invitations with Zoom links into a calendar invite? I mean, I think it's helpful, obviously to get it via email, but like, and maybe if this is just me and my disorganization, please say so, because that is probably true. But just easier for, to have at least like some kind of marquee events that where the board is either strongly encouraged to attend. I mean, obviously these meetings being the first example, but other things like that where we could actually get an invitation to our calendar, because I found myself this morning like trying to feel through all the email exchanges just to find the Zoom link. So
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to add anything to anyone else's plate, but I mean, I think that for some of these really important meetings, that would be really helpful.
Completely agree. I believe that the 25-year review has a link. Excuse me. I believe that for the 25-year review, there was a calendar invitation sent out with a link for registration. Let me just double check, but we can definitely think about a way to send out other invitations. Maybe we can put board members on our distribution list for like the first Friday invitations. I'm thinking about things that come out already on our calendars. Yeah, we can think through that. I'm the exact same way. I need something to be on my calendar to know that it's actually happening. So we'll figure out how to help with that process.
Thank you so much.
Of course. And that,
oh, sorry.
I was just going to say that that's the end of my presentation.
Okay. I just wanted to include one more thing. Being a parent representative, I know parents may have questions live while this is going on. For those parents that are watching, you can filter your questions for East End to me on Parent Square. That's how I've been communicating the questions to the board. And if it's after, we can discuss it offline. But I wanted to make people aware of that since there are new parents that are joining and that I've been having conversations with during the meeting. And Adina, if you want to talk how you would do it for Brooklyn campus.
I was going to say, I guess that's me for for Brooklyn. Wait, you said that you're communicating via Parent Square, Crystal?
Yeah, so the announcement is made through the communication about the board trustee meeting. However, parents may have questions live that they may want answered. And in the past, what I've been doing is alerting the parents that it's happening live. And I put the link in Parent Square. And then if there were any questions in the past, they put it there. I believe this parent may be new. They didn't know how to filter questions because they asked for the Zoom link. But I want to make parents aware the Zoom link is just for board trustees. This is our meeting that we would normally have. And now there is a policy where it has to be an open meeting. And then in a part of the year, there is a meeting that is open to the parents, but that's not the case for every meeting. So I just wanted parents to be aware there is an opportunity to present questions, but it's through the parent representatives during the meeting.
Okay, that's super helpful. Thank you for raising that because that was not on my radar. So how about Crystal? I'll just offline with you just to get a little bit more information about your process so that I can replicate it for the Brookline parents.
Yeah, and this is something that's not formal. It's something that I do, being that, parents do have questions. So
I think that's great. So I'm just going to copy you. So I'll text you after.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, Erica, thank you for your report. We are going, I'll do one last call with you. Any other questions for Erica about her executive director's report? Okay, we will move on to the next phase of this, and that phase will be the committee reports from the committee chair. I'll remind us all to be cognizant of the time, and also the committee report that are updated. And please be now remind folk, or I will remind all that those items that have to do with contract discussion, contract negotiation discussions, or personnel discussion are items that are to be discussed in closed session according to the articles and instructions of the DC Public Charter School Board's closed meeting agenda. So we will start with the Finance Committee report from Carlos Bonner, and then we will move to the Development Committee report, and then we will move to the Governance report. And I know that I think that we might have inadvertently omitted the Academic Committee's report from the board agenda, but we'll have that after the Governance report. Okay, so I will kick this over to Mr. Bonner. Mr. Bonner, if you have any updates, please let us know, and then we'll move on to the Development Committee with.
Yeah, the Finance Committee report out is a brief report today for the board. But just to update you, the one initiative to streamline our reporting processes, we have met with the consultant twice, the proposed consultant Shorter, and they have presented templates in a budget which the Finance Committee has worked through with them. And we think that it is something that would be beneficial for the school to move forward with, that would help our overall reporting for the network between the Stokes, both campuses. And we met this week, and we have indicated via the Finance Committee that our recommendation is that the school moves forward with engaging the third-party group to help streamline the accounting process. Any questions there? The other initiative regarding which is a big thing, the lease at the East End campus, we have engaged with the faculty on their progress with that, and they have made significant progress of understanding the requirements to sign the extension, which is due the first part of January, but because through communications and some needs of the school, both parties have agreed to look at those issues, those items before the amendment is executed. And the key item for the East End campus is really space allocation. The campus is growing, which is a positive thing, and we always knew that, and we're preparing for that. And so we're just making sure the lease aligns to the growth and the requirements with that growth. And so there's probably, as far as leases go, probably just a couple more weeks of, some having clarity between Building Hope, what their asks may be, and the school figuring out holistically what our, call it, expansion needs may be. But I think both parties are aligned in agreement that we want to continue to move forward with signing an amendment for Stokes to stay at the East End campus and grow. And this would be a 5-year renewal extension, which was already contemplated in the original lease. So this isn't a new item, it's just our growth. It just requires us to ask for a couple of things, and the couple of things is maybe to augment one of the areas for administration so that we can have more better classroom setup. So I would definitely think by the next meeting we should have the lease requirements fully flushed out for the board to vote on, based upon the current pace. Are there any questions regarding the lease? All right, I did a good job, or y'all leap.
Thank you, Carlos. I think that explained it pretty well.
It's so gloomy outside this winter. We got to start laughing a little bit more.
Yeah.
We are taking care of some great scholars who are doing some great things. So the board needs to act can feel like we are doing a great job. So
Yeah, agree.
Rodney still has his Christmas tree, so let's all do some cheering.
Right. Right. I
Yeah,
saw that in the background.
And
Yes,
if you-
yes, it's going down today, but I live between New York and Baltimore now, so
Yeah.
I'm not here a lot, but yeah.
don't take it down for us. Keep it
No,
up.
no. It
Good
has
after the
to go
next-
down. It has to go down.
All right. All right.
All right. Next up is the Development Committee reports. Excuse me, from Ms. Ellis.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so since the last time we met, there were a few things that are indicated in the notes of goals that we're looking to hit for the development committee. Just as a reminder, well, I looked at the notes and it said that this year is a building year, and I guess that meant 2022. So I don't know how long you guys are going to allow me to be in the building year space, but in any case, I was able over some days off that I took in December, was able to revisit some of the draft collateral materials that me, Ms. Moore, Erica, and Heather had discussed in the Q3, Q4 of last year, including a spreadsheet that I've developed so I can really start categorizing target donors based on the priorities that we identified last year. So just really quickly, I mean, those priorities are middle school expansion, and I'm just giving you the top line categories. There's subcategories under some of these, but a healthy food program, urban farming, environmental justice, outdoor recreation, international studies tours, and then human capital.
I thought it had come back on.
Carlos,
Carlos,
Carlos.
So anyhow, I'm trying to connect with Heather because one of the deliverables was assigned to her, and I know she had to drop early, so I'm going to follow up with her. But Erica, now that you're back, I think that we need to reconvene as a committee just to kind of regroup and set some new deadlines. I mean, I think that we're in a good place. I mean, I generally think that we have the content that we need. This is really just about getting these documents to a place where they're ready to be public facing and for us to utilize in our engagement with some of these target donors. So next steps for me is to get a meeting on the calendar. So Ms. Moore, Erica, and I know Heather's not here, just look for an email from me today so that we can get another meeting on the calendar so that we can just finalize these documents and then start moving towards, doing some relationship mapping and figuring out what outreach is going to look like. And I think that's it.
Any questions for Ms. Ellis? All right, thank you. Thank you very much. We'll go on next to the governance report. Ms. Richardson was unable to attend today, so in her stead, we'll have Ms. Friedlander. Tracy, if you wouldn't mind giving us a updated brief on the governance from the governance committee report.
Thank you, Hoyt. So at this point in time, the governance committee does not have any updates to share. We are continuing to work on multiple fronts, including developing an onboarding practice for our new trustees, recruiting new board members, updating the bylaws of the school, and also working with a third-party consultants regarding board performance assessments.
Okay, thank you. Next we'll have the report from the academic.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, can I just ask one really quick question of Tracy? Tracy, do you all have a tentative date for when the recruitment language is going to be ready? Because that's one thing that I left off in my report is that I desperately need I think we desperately need to add someone to the development committee who has some strong development background. And I'm like anxious to post it like on LinkedIn or through my networks, but I was waiting for that recruitment language. So I'm just wondering if you all have any kind of tentative date on when that might be ready.
Thank you. Are you looking for language to use as far as recruiting new board members or as committee members? You might recall that part of the process of recruiting individuals for the board involves asking them to also consider, prior to joining the board, joining a committee. And so what we could do is talk offline about what language that you could share with your community. Okay. And also be happy to reach out to others as well that we might know to join the committee that have a development background.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions for Tracy? Okay, we will move on to the academic committee report.
Sure. So that's me, Kira. So now that we had requested the the data to come back from the well-being data project, and so now that we have that data, it came over the winter break. We needed some time for the committee to be able to look at that and process it ourselves. And that the plan is to come together and for us to start discussions about how we maybe want to start thinking about ways to address especially those areas of perseverance and self-efficacy. So sort of reverse those trends, hopefully. Additionally, I will be requesting and hoping to get some data we'll start to see from our standardized testing scores. Just to see what, as I imagine, like most national trends now these days, what are those learning gaps or setbacks that were there? And again, how we may be able to start to address those trends or reverse those trends, especially from the standpoint as equity relates to it, correlates to some of those setbacks and trends. That's it.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Orr? All right. That will, I believe that actually completes our committee report updates from our finance, all our committees, finance, development, governments, and academic. And that will actually conclude our open meetings session portion of our meeting today. The board, it is now 10:56 a.m. Are there any other questions for myself or Tom or Erica or any folks on the call that you may have before we move to the language that will take us to the closed section? Okay. All right. Well, in that case, the board will now adjourn the open meeting and will go into closed session, pursuant to DC Code 2575B3 to discuss, establish, or instruct the public body staff or negotiating agents concerning the position to be taken in negotiating incentives relating to the location or expansion of industries or other businesses or business activities in the district. And DC Code 2-575B10 to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, performance, evaluation, compensation, discipline, demotion, removal, or resignation of government appointees, employees, or official. Do we have a motion to adjourn the closed meeting, the open meeting session, and move into the closed meeting session?
I move to adjourn the closed session of the Board of Trustees meeting.
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry, the open session.
Thank you. The open session. Do we have a second?
I second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say no, nay. Okay. This, the open